Final Fantasy 16 is set to release June 22nd. It is releasing exclusively to the PlayStation 5, and up until this point, we've heard nothing but good news about this game. The preview events that were held came out with glowing reviews. All the trailers look fantastic, and overall, the fan reception has been taken very well. Until today, on a Patreon post, a one Emron Khan pretty much teased a little bit of an insight as far as like what Square Enix's headspace is at going into the release date of Final Fantasy 16. Emron Khan, if you guys do not know, he was an ex-Game Informer journalist. He has been like let go due to a bunch of layoffs within like the media and stuff like that. Emron Khan is a pretty recognizable figure within like game news journalism and stuff like that. He does have like people who work behind the scenes that he's very close with. So I wouldn't be surprised if his Patreon post was very accurate. So let's get into what he said. On his Patreon post, he said, "I had heard recently that Square Enix is panicking slightly over Final Fantasy 16 pre-order numbers, which are tracking behind Final Fantasy 15, even accounting for the lesser number of launching platforms." So I feel like a lot of people took this information and are running with it in a very weird direction, I think. There's been a lot of people saying that this is like proves the end of Final Fantasy, or that Final Fantasy 16 is going to be a terrible game. There was even one YouTube channel that I saw that said that maybe Final Fantasy 16 should go like the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom route. And that bothers the hell out of me when these people kind of like take one small little bit of information, and run with it as far as they possibly can, because no one's going to come out and dispute them on this. And I get it. But here's the thing. Square Enix is a publisher. And as a publisher, they freaking love pre-orders. They want you to pre-order all their games. This is why a lot of companies have like pre-order bonuses or pre-order marketing that ties into the game. It's an easier way of them to gauge kind of interest in this game, so they can forecast to their investors how much they anticipate the game to sell. Now, whether or not this game has a million pre-orders or 10 million pre-orders, none of that stuff matters to the actual end game of this, because the game is already done. The game is ready to release essentially, and the game is gonna be what it is, whether or not people pre-ordered it or not. And pre-orders, I don't think, are 100% indicative of what final sales are gonna be. For example, Final Fantasy 16 is a game I'm buying day one. I haven't pre-ordered it, and nor do I really plan on pre-order it unless they add something or reason for me to pre-order it. But I could just wait to purchase it on day one. It's not that big a deal for me, and I feel like that's a lot of people. Not to mention the fact that I feel like a lot of people feel a little burned by Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 13 wasn't what a lot of us wanted. Final Fantasy 15, for a lot of people, it wasn't what people wanted. So there is a little skepticism going into Final Fantasy 16 from like the core fan base of Final Fantasy that would pre-order a game. The regular Joe Schmo who's interested in this game probably isn't going to pre-order this game because it's new to them. But for those of us who've been playing Final Fantasy forever, some of us are a little skeptical. I get it. Because again, Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 15 weren't the games we wanted. Final Fantasy 16 is going in a very different direction as far as being like a 100% action combat Devil May Cry style game. And it's yet to be seen whether that fits in with Final Fantasy, as well as some of the previews are saying, as well as the developer is saying. So we're going into this game with heavy skepticism, and we're still staying positive on it. And I think a lot of people are willing to buy the game after reviews come out, after the day one impressions come out. Then we'll start seeing this game kind of pick up in sales. But yeah, I just don't get why people are acting like this pre-order panic is indicative of Final Fantasy 16 being a failure or a flop. That's, again, still yet to be seen. I think Final Fantasy 16, when it releases, it is going to review very high. It is going to be a Game of the Year contender. And I think a lot of people are kind of preying on its downfall. And it seems kind of, I don't know, it feels kind of dirty. And I get it. We don't love Square Enix as a publisher as much as we once have. They've made a lot of sketchy, weird things in the past. That doesn't take away from this specific game being this specific game, though. And I feel kind of like, why? What is the need to be so negative about this? yes, the publisher is probably a little freaked out because they expected more pre-orders of their mainline title game. I feel like that's a pretty natural response for a publisher. You know, they want to be able to say, look, this game is pre-ordered at like 10 million record-breaking numbers. That way it looks good for the investors. But that doesn't really change the consumer's reception. That's not really going to change the way the game is built or the development team behind it. It's just like that kind of pre-launch jitters, I think. You know, Square Enix is really banking that Final Fantasy 16 is going to help them out a lot. It is going to be a game that they anticipate is going to get them out of their kind of situation that they dug themselves in with some of their other games. And yeah, they're betting a lot on this one horse. And I do think for right reasons, though. I feel like they are very confident in this game. The developer is very confident in this game. Again, I just don't understand, if you're not the publisher, why the hell do you guys give a heck what the pre-order numbers are, or if they're panicking or not? Let them worry about that shit. That's not a us thing. And I feel like too, as consumers, or even like as people who speak on these video games, aren't we always preaching don't pre-order games, don't give the companies money until you see the final product, until the reviews come in? Isn't that what we're always preaching? Shouldn't we be celebrating the fact that we're gonna get a great game and we didn't have to pre-order anything? We did it on our own accords, not on their accords. I don't know, it's so weird. And I don't know, I feel like the people who are making a big fuss about this game are people who weren't really interested in the game to begin with. So I see like Xbox fanboys or Nintendo fanboys who weren't gonna play Final Fantasy 16 because they don't really play PlayStation like that, and they're the ones who are trying to make this out to be a bigger deal. Like, look, Square Enix, the big PlayStation 5 exclusivity deal isn't working out for them. Maybe they're regretting this. Maybe they should have focused more on Nintendo, or maybe they should have focused more on Xbox, and that way they wouldn't be struggling as much. Maybe Xbox or Nintendo sales would have allowed them to have more pre-orders. It's loony. It's very loony behavior. I don't know, man. I feel like people underestimate what a PlayStation exclusive can do for a publisher, where they don't have to pay as much for marketing, and PlayStation normally sends in a couple of support teams to help you guys out with things. It's just, there's a lot more to the exclusivity deal than just, I want my game only for PlayStation. Why would that be just a one-way street? You don't think Square Enix gets a huge kickback in making sure that this game is going to release phenomenal? And it's the reason why they could take so much extra time to get this game out right. Final Fantasy 15 was rushed out in a very weird, problematic development cycle. And if PlayStation had bought out that exclusivity right, then they probably would have had more time to cook it and make it better. And I personally think Square Enix does their best work when they're focusing exclusively on one console. Look at all the great things that they released for the Nintendo Switch. Look at all the great things that they released just for PlayStation, minus Forspoken. But I think typically when they work specifically just for one console, they're able to focus it in better on one audience. They're able to optimize the game better. And I just feel like Final Fantasy 16 is going to benefit from being a PlayStation exclusive. And then, 6 months, a year down the road, they're going to release it on PC. So just to end my thoughts real quick, no, I don't think this pre-order panicking BS thing really affects the game. It doesn't really affect the way the game is going to sell. And it doesn't really affect the future of Final Fantasy. I think Final Fantasy 16, in its long term, it's going to sell well. I think Final Fantasy games typically have long tails. And it's really going to rely heavily on that word of mouth. People just playing the game and telling people, yes, you can trust this Final Fantasy game because it is great because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Or no, don't buy it because you don't like whatever reasons this is, right? But I definitely think it's going to be a longer term sell story than it is going to be like that immediate, sold 20 million copies on like year one or something, Anyways, that wraps up my thoughts. Like the video if you guys enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing as it does help me out tons. And with that, I'll see you guys on the next video.